I'm going to pass it over to our 20-year tech vet, Dan Langell. And so Dan will go ahead and introduce the panel. And just a quick note, even outside of work, Dan actually volunteers as a hockey and Special Olympics coach, instilling values of sportsmanship and team play. So not only is he looking at cloud jobs, but he's also looking to the future and what kind of folks we have in our communities. So Dan, with that, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Ellie and Bria. Wow, that's a tough act to follow. That was incredible. Thank you for sharing your story. And so, pleasure here for me today to moderate the Cloud Jobs Power panel. And I'm joined today by a very impressive lineup. Eddie Bader, who's the VP of Operations at Aegis Innovators, and then Dawn Marie Elder, who's the COO of Scipio, and Eve Stacy, who's Vice President Market for Microsoft, the US Partner Group at Microsoft, and then Ashley Suchek, who's the account manager for Randstad Technologies. And we are going to spend approximately the next 30 to 40 minutes going through a Q&A amongst the panel on an array of topics related to cloud jobs. And so I think you'll find it to be a very, worthwhile and valuable 40 minutes. So thank you everybody for joining the panel. Let's start with an opening round robin, and maybe we'll go alphabetically with this. And so I'm curious because cloud jobs can mean many different things and many different things to me.
Cloud jobs mean more than just going from a traditional computer on-prem business model of monthly charge versus capital investment. It's a new way of doing business that has opened up opportunities. I saw recently that there's over $330 billion expected to be done in 2022 within this sector. And the importance of identifying where we can go with the opportunities is going to be increasingly important to take a software developer into the cloud and have the opportunities to really take this new environment, especially with the pandemic and how that focused for businesses, the importance of having the capabilities of working from home and working in this new dynamic. It's more critical than ever.
Wonderful. Dawn Marie.
So I initially thought of a pilot because those were the original cloud jobs. But today I think that cloud jobs are really anybody that's working in an environment where you're supporting or leveraging technology for the product set that you sell. And whether you are directly having your hands or head in the cloud, or you're supporting somebody with those initiatives, those are cloud jobs because they could be the accounting function or the marketing function as well as the sales function.
Interesting. Eddie, your perspective.
Yeah, I think Ashley and Dawn Marie really nailed it, but I'll add to it my take on it. I look at it, cloud jobs as access and opportunity. You don't necessarily need to live next to your employer in that city. You can, this idea of being in the cloud, being able to be remote, you can be anywhere. You can be, and I think that's really important when we talk about having to relocate, the ability to relocate and things of that nature. So I think that cloud work and specifically remote work brings a great deal of access and opportunities for those who may not have had it in the past.
And Eve.
It feels like it's been said. I guess what I would say is, the what of cloud jobs has been described. The benefit of cloud jobs is operating in a high change environment and really us to the future. And I think, 50% of the economy has made this shift, but there's another 50% to go. As I think Ashley said, the pandemic accelerated a lot of this remote work for so many people, but it's really opened the door for people to see just how much they can get done and more efficiently. And so I think that the pace will only continue to accelerate. So from a career perspective, it's a great opportunity area.
Yeah, I like that. Those are great perspectives. And so as a panel, would you agree with sort of a summary statement that a cloud job is a job that you can do anywhere, and a cloud job is a job that can be anything. It's virtually limitless. I mean, that's what I've seen, at least. Would you agree with that?
That sounds pretty broad. Anything, anywhere.
I mean, from the point of view that, I mean, I've worked myself for companies as far afield as Australia, and you know, in the cloud world, and you know, a cloud job doesn't have to be just coding. It doesn't have to be just one thing or another. I think it was Don Marie, or maybe who said it can be accounting, it can be sales, it can be marketing, it can be social media brand manager, it can be a data scientist.
I think working in the cloud and for the cloud are two different pieces that really are important and useful to understand when you're looking for the opportunity, what's going to be the best fit for you. We work in the cloud now from home, but if you want to help support that, I know many businesses are looking for individuals to help because their business continuity was affected with this big shift. And so there are gaps that can be filled with new talent.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ashley, because you don't want to confuse somebody's work function with what the priority of their organization is, because what is cloud is a whole different conversation in terms of how different companies are bringing their solutions or offerings to the marketplace.
Perfect. And so let's go to Eve for this next question. And Eve, what are you seeing from business decision makers, and how are they leaning in on cloud roles?
I think that so my background was at Microsoft, and then I left and went to Concur, where Ellie is now at SAP Concur. We were acquired by SAP, and then I worked for a high growth software company in Canada in employee engagement software, and now have come back to Microsoft. So I've had a kind of round circle. When I left Microsoft in 2013, we talked about business decision makers and considered the consumerization of IT, where people were buying their own technology with phones and bringing it into their workplace. And I think that now the world has moved so far beyond that IT decision makers are often just serving business decision makers around technology now. And that for one who is selling to or serving these people as customers, you need to have a holistic group of buyers in a company that are supporting the idea of buying technology that's going to be transformational because of how much it will take to actually make that happen, and also understand who the blockers are. And so I think those business decision makers can be a mix of people who will be big advocates and be people who will benefit from the change. And they can also be people who are threatened by the change, and understanding that realm of business decision makers and what their relationships are like with the IT community, either supportive and collaborative or adversarial, is critical to really understand the landscape.
Great.
I agree with the comment that she made about people being intimidated by it, because I think we see a lot of folks that, you know, haven't necessarily been given the tools or focus on developing their own skills around how to adapt. You know, I've worked from home since 1997. Most people haven't, but I've seen in the last 6 months, you can kind of figure out who's done this for a long time and who doesn't by how they show up. And you guys have all heard some of my stories. I won't necessarily repeat those here, but how people, you know, show up. You know, is your business casual, maybe too casual? I'll leave it at that. But I think that tells you a little bit about where people are coming from, and organizations now needing to pave the way with good policies and procedures internally, so that your cloud life isn't your whole life and you never get to leave the computer and you're always on and expected to be working at 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. and all the things that Bria talked about. It was a blur before, but now it's even more of a blur than it was. Drawing those lines around your day and your work or your night.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, and I guess it begs the question then: how does working in the cloud or on the cloud, as the case may be, which for the past year really has meant working remotely, how does that mitigate against disruptors such as this pandemic?
Well, think about back in like 80s and 90s, how would you have done your job if you didn't have a computer and Wi-Fi? Like what would this world look like if the pandemic had hit 20, 30 years ago? We wouldn't have the option to be keeping our kids home from school and doing school from home, right? Unless you mailed them a book and some notepaper and something else. So we've been fortunate that technology's allowed us these capabilities and freedoms.
And yet, I would even say that
Not for all.
not for all, right? So there's an assumption that we all have access, but that's not true for everybody. So this opportunity to work remotely, this opportunity to just make this easy transition to go online, that doesn't exist for everybody. And I think that's something that as an employer, you need to be mindful of, and you should have programs in place because if you don't, you're actually excluding potentially a good portion of your candidates and population, right? So I think it's easy for us to say that things would be different, and they are different for sure. I totally agree with Dawn Marie, but they're not different for everybody. And I think we have to be mindful of that.
I can share just real quickly on that. There was a candidate that was going into a third round interview for a architect level position that it was assumed that there was access to Wi-Fi for some of not only the presentation portion, but the coding section. The candidate was hired, and it was later found that he was on an unsecured Wi-Fi network because he had gone to a local Wi-Fi spot, and he lost his job for that. And so it is not necessarily working for everyone, and it is something that we need business decision makers to take a look at and make sure that we have options for those individuals as well.
Interesting. Yeah, good point. Eddie, let's go to you for this next question. Because it's, I guess, sort of a companion to the current topic. What do you see are the best practices and the greatest challenges of working remotely?
Well, I think we just talked about one of them, the assumption of access. I think, again, for employers, I think you have to be very mindful when you have candidates. I think it would be great to establish a program that says, hey, look, we have things in place that if you don't have access, we will provide you access. I think those are things to be considered. We have programs for all types of situations, and I think that we should consider that as well. And I believe when you start thinking about that, you become more inclusive as well, right? And that's a huge piece. As a candidate, I think you need to be open about your situation. So Ashley's example was great. If they could have, if that individual could have had a open dialogue and felt comfortable to have that open dialogue with their prospective employer and say, look, I don't have access. I'm going to be in Starbucks on an unsecure network doing this at work. Can we have that conversation, right? And a lot of this is just being authentic and having as an individual, as a candidate, as an employer, having authentic conversations to say, this is where we are, this is who I am, and being able to work through that. I think that's really important. Those are some of the challenges. I think, Dawn Marie hit on some great things as well. Maintaining professionalism. We've kind of, and I'll be the first to admit it, and I'll be candid. We were on a little preparation call for this panel discussion, and I was not on video, but I had a hat on, a baseball cap on, and Dawn Marie was talking about, I think, we've gotten a little too casual, people wearing baseball caps, and I'm like, yep, that was me right there. So and now you see today I'm without the baseball cap. I think maintaining professionalism, there's some things that you have to remember. You may be at home, but you got to think like you're in the office. So get up, get ready as if you're going to office. Your home office is now your work office, right? So you got to make that mentally, it puts you in a different mindset, I think. So that's really important. Get your mind ready to go and really get your head in it. And I think the other thing Dawn Marie talked about was burnout and health. The statistics show that working from home and working remotely, we tend to put in many more hours. And I can tell you from experience, my meetings run back to back with no breaks in between. Now, in a normal environment, I'd probably be traveling a little bit. I'd have breaks in between. I think best practices there schedule some break time in between meetings and don't do it back to back. I think what happens is if you're in meetings all day, and you don't tend to not get things done, so you have to work a few hours later just to actually make progress on your actual tasks and things like that. So that stretches an 8-hour day into a 10 to 12-hour day. And if you don't get out of the house, you end up like this, no sun, right? So you need to think about that kind of stuff too. So I think health is important here, and we tend to sit. Right now I have a desk, I'm standing up because I can't sit all day. It just drives me nuts. But a lot of these best practices are something that you think, that goes without saying, but it doesn't. So as an employer, you need to be mindful of that and thinking about your employees, because I guarantee you that when you think about them, you will reap the benefits. When you take a little time to be mindful and considerate, people feel that. People understand, like, you care about them. So I think setting some ground rules and setting some expectations that are realistic and help encouraging them to do these best things that you will get more from those candidates. I think it's great.
I think, Eddie, when you talk about, the empathy of understanding people in their circumstances to really connect with them, for me, I've started this job mid-pandemic. So I've never met my manager. I've never met my team of 75 people. I've never met my peers. I've only met the partners that I know from my prior life. And so being able to be authentic and also get to know people and know them holistically, what are their kids' names? What are they struggling with at home? What's happening with the people in their lives that have COVID? And making enough time, even though the business is moving quickly, to have those connections. And then also team building, which is another dimension, because people are so siloed. To make the work flow well and also to have a sense of cohesion in team is another thing that I think you need to, invest extra energy around to make it work remotely.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And you'd appreciate this, Eve, perhaps.
Sorry, you don't do what Eve just said. You're really foregoing the importance of building a culture or keeping a culture within your organization. And I bet you there'd be a whole lot of articles in, Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review and all the rest of them 6 more months from now addressing that topic, because people are really overlooking those things that she covered.
Yeah. And one thing I found with the dramatic increase in, I guess, video calls is that everybody's, unless they have a background turned on, you get to see a little glimpse into, the person's personal life. And actually, I found to a degree that the rapport is enhanced, because you can start the call with a conversation about, that great piece of art in the background, or the significance of that piece of memorabilia on the shelf.
Or the 5-year-old running in with a snack, which happened on the meeting that I was.
I'm not sure if you heard a moment ago, I had someone tiptoe through that hit the baby gate, and that was the drastic mom eye there for a second. So it happens.
Yeah, I gave everybody at my house a text. Do not walk in and out of the kitchen door behind me, because there's not a blurred background today until after 6 p.m. So
I guarantee you there's a 15-month-old on the other side of this door that's got noodles in her hair and looks adorable. I just can't look at her right now, but those are some of the benefits of being home too, right?
Yeah.
And it makes it real. So
it does. It humanizes people, and now you know who has dogs, and what casual means to some people and not others. I would just give everybody a little piece of advice: don't wear your bathrobe on camera, and don't have your unmade bed in back of you, because that's not the best. And those have really happened many times. But yeah, any other setup is fine.
Cool. Well, I think it was Ellie in her opening remarks talked about the impact or the value or importance of upskilling. And so maybe start with Ashley on this one. Can you talk about the importance of skilling and upskilling to get into a cloud role, or if you're in a cloud role, to advance your career or to stay relevant later in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I know reskilling, you can be learning new things and kind of expanding your reach, but upskilling really is stepping outside of your current knowledge set and realizing that there is a different direction or path that you want to go. I think it's important, especially right now when you look at the pandemic and what that's done to our workforce. There are tremendous needs, and there's got to be some self-discipline to take the opportunity to develop your skills, utilize the resources out there. There was a fantastic blog that was put out by Microsoft that really opened up what LinkedIn has done with all of their free and complimentary courses and navigates pathways towards career success, many of which are still complimentary through the end of a couple months out from now. I know Randstad itself on our career page, I put in this morning just cloud to see what was available, and there was over 1,600 jobs here in the US. Take a look at those and see what you're missing, and then look for free resources. There are certifications you'll have to pay for, a lot of which though Microsoft I know right now has programs in place for individuals, but find out what is needed. Take the time when you have it now to invest in yourself, so that way when we start to rebuild and things open up and there are opportunities now, you're already one step ahead instead of waiting for someone else to take the opportunity to grow those pieces. It really starts with yourself and being disciplined enough to move forward, to really care about your own development and see that success kind of pay forward. I'm going to be in the lounge later. I have a lot of resources that I pulled together to share, but I think it's important that we don't wait for someone else to tap us on the shoulder to say what's needed, and to really always be investing in our own skills to move us forward to the next position that we're most interested in.
And if I could just tag on that real quick, as an employer, I think it's really important to look at your hiring practices and your job descriptions, because language can be exclusive at times. And you really need to look at how you're writing your job descriptions, because some people look at that and automatically self-select them out of being a candidate for that position. So I always think it's a good practice to go through that and think about who you're excluding. So just throw that out there.
I've never been one, super focused on training programs, but I've had the great privilege in the time that I've returned to Microsoft over the last few months to learn from Brené Brown. I don't know how many of you on the call have heard of her, but she's got a new book out called Dare to Lead. And it's really about empathy and vulnerability and bringing those things into the workplace in an authentic way, and how to learn how to have, really tough conversations and rumble on things that are difficult, that particularly, to Eddie's earlier points about working remotely, become skills and a place where common language can really help, because of how easy it is to misunderstand nuance in a virtual environment. I think someone in the chat was talking about some of the essential work from home kind of things that you need to know to avoid those nuanced missed cues. But Brené Brown is a really interesting person for a lot of business place softer skills that I would encourage people to check out if you've not done so already.
Nice. Cool. So,
yeah, Eddie, one of the things that we did recently at my company, and I'm anxious to see how this works because we just finished it, is we had everyone go through and rewrite their own job descriptions. And as a leadership team, we're reviewing those and trying to get a feel for, is there a disconnect between the intention and what we wanted them to do and what we think they're doing versus what they want to do and what they think that they are doing.
That's a great idea, Dawn Marie.
Yeah, I don't really have any more information on it than that, but we're getting ready to redo our compensation plan. So we thought it would be a time to, rather than measuring them against MBOs that had been created, some time ago, let's do a check into the here and now. So I can offer a part 2 later and maybe give some feedback on how that went.
Be fun to hear about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So let's go back to a round robin question for the next one, because I'm curious, given that this is a multi-generational event, what do you see as the challenges and the opportunities of a multi-generational cloud work environment? Let's start with you this time, Eve.
I love that topic. We're going to be a 5-generation workforce in the next couple of years, and that is a wide range. As the mother of a 22-year-old, 19-year-old, and 18-year-old, I am front and center with the moments of entitlement and level of work that feels lower than what it feels like I was doing at those ages. And I think that's probably part of every parent's view, no matter what generation you live in. But it's been great for me to see in the workplace how things are shifting. You know, we have a reverse mentoring program at Microsoft in our US team, where I can learn from somebody who is, you know, very early in career and who is seeing Microsoft from a fresh lens. I think the adoption of technology and the pace of some things can be much faster. The younger the group tends to be, and yet the knowledge, context setting, things that need to be considered for decisions and so forth is something where some more experience can often be at play. And so I find getting teams together that are really a mix of both types of experience and then also length of experience really can produce something great. And I feel like the younger generations will also keep those of us who've been here for a while on our toes, as we should have to be.
Yeah.
Eddie, let's go to you.
I love it, actually. I love that we have such a broad group of people in the workspace together, because for me, I learn from everybody, right? I think some of the younger generations born with technology in their hands from day one, they pick up things really quickly, and it's very intuitive for them. And sometimes it takes me a while to pick up on it, but I'm like, oh, that's great. Why aren't we doing that? And they have that mindset. And at the same time, there's a different kind of work ethic, maybe mindset that an older generation brings. And I think merging those folks together can produce some really wonderful results. And the only other thing I will say about this is, for those that are in the workplace now, and I will say this specifically, well, for everybody, because we all have to be allies, but for like Ashley, for Eve, for Dawn Marie, for Jennifer, for Ellie, for all those that are on this panel right now, and for Bria and all of you, we've got to start getting in front of kids and the younger generation. We've got to start showing them that we have wonderful business leaders, bright people in this industry, so they can think of STEM as an opportunity for them, so they can see that they have a career here, and so they don't self-select themselves, out of this opportunity. And by seeing you as leaders in an array of positions and things like that, I think that's very powerful, and we need to get that message out more often.
Cool. Dawn Marie?
Here. I have a 11th grader daughter. She is one of the halves, right? She's a Microsoft baby. She was born when I worked there, and has grown up hearing everything about technology. You talk to her friends, her friend group, as she calls them, nobody really has any thoughts around careers that might be in technology. She's one of a couple of young ladies that are in their STEM program at the school, and she's constantly trying to recruit others, but it's not considered cool just yet in her generation. So one of the things I'd like to see over time with Women in Cloud is, can we do some additional outreach programs and maybe, adopt schools where we're taking the united front of the 2,000 people that are part of this organization and doing reach out when kids are young and they're more influenceable than they are, going on. Because even though they have one of those devices in their hands at birth, they don't necessarily know how that leads to a job or a career, because to them, it's what they do every day.
Cool. Ashley?
Yeah, I'll just add one note, especially about the multi-generational workforce, and things to keep in mind is communication is key, and understanding the way that one generation hears a task or a given responsibility that's going to be accepted many different ways depending on what your work experience and your background look like. So I know multi-generational communication and understanding and allowing people to maybe raise their hand or ask more questions or really dive deeper, get uncomfortable with understanding what it is that's being maybe asked from a boss, or having the conversations to what would lead to covering in some situations where you're not giving your true and authentic self, and allow and encourage those types of conversations to happen between the generations, so they kind of come and narrow into one given like work stream that can be collaborative together. But I echo where we were going in regards to STEM, and really starting as young as possible, because that's going to be the future of where we funnel things going forward.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's actually, so that's it for our panel session. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.